welcome back, everyone. In this short series of lectures, we will talk about a poetry explication and how to write a poetry explication. And we talked about writing about poetry. There's lots of different ways to write about poetry. And one of them is an explication. It's kind of a good starter as we get moving into writing about poetry. So you might wonder, what is the purpose of an explication? What poetry explication does is that it provides the reader with a detailed analysis as well as an interpretation of a specific poem. Now, a lot of people say, well, gosh, when I read poems, I interpret them a little bit differently. And yeah, this is what it's about. So long as you can make a good argument to support your interpretation through analysis and evidence, this is valid. But what's key is that regardless of your interpretation, if it's correct, it should match up with the theme of the poem as stated by other writers. So a lot of people say, well, everything is based upon interpretation, and there's a little bit of error with that statement, because if your interpretation is really out of line, out of whack, the theme that you've come up with will not connect with and be reflected by the content of the poem itself. So, when we go in and we write an explication, we want to avoid explaining everything in the poem. That's not the purpose of doing this poetry explication. What we want to be centering on for our explication is the theme of the poem. That's going to be our focus, and then everything else should be supporting that. Now, anytime that you refer to the title of a poem, it goes inside of quotation marks. Okay? Do not italicize the title of a poem. Do not italicize the title of a poem. The title of a poem goes inside of quotation marks. And you want to put that into your opening there. Then you want to provide a brief summary of the poem, just 1 to 2 sentences, and that main idea that you're going to come up with for the theme of the poem should end your opening. And then you want to use brief quotes, 2 to 3 per body paragraph. Now, the target length here is 300 words. 300 words. And a lot of people, they go, oh wow, I can do 300 words. And yeah, you probably can. But it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to do 300 words well. Simplicity is sophistication. A lot of people wonder, why are we writing 300-word essays? Believe it or not, it's pretty tough to be a good writer of brief, simple writing. It's a challenge. So as we start to go through, we'll pick up some tips, and I'll show some things to do and some things not to do. So this is the poem that we'll be working with. Love is Not All by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Love is not all. It is not meat nor drink, nor slumber, nor a roof against the rain, nor yet a floating spar to men that sink and rise and sink and rise and sink again. Love cannot fill the thickened lung with breath, nor clean the blood, nor set the fractured bone. Yet many a man is making friends with death, even as I speak, for lack of love alone. It well may be that in a difficult hour, pinned down by need and moaning for release, or nagged by want past resolution's power, I might be driven to sell your love for peace, or trade the memory of this night for food. It may well be. I do not think I would. Very, very nice little poem here. Now, so what you want to do next, you want to follow all of those steps that we talked about with writing about a poem, right? Reading a poem. All of those other lectures, all of that content should be internalized now. You should be able to do this, look over your notes from the previous lectures. And then we'll come back and we'll look at some models, some good, some bad, for poetry analysis. Pause this video and then go through that process about reading a poem and writing about a poem to generate your rough draft. So go ahead and pause. Okay. Now, what you need to do next is you need to take that raw material and then put it into the proper form, the proper structure of a 300-word essay. And what I'm about to share with everyone is what a 300-word essay should look like on the printed page. So imagine that these little rectangular boxes are paragraphs on your page. Okay. So I know those are some wacky looking rectangles, but this is what it should look like. You should have little, big, big, little, right? So here, this is our opening. The opening should be brief. It should be 2 sentences maximum. Reason being, a lot of people go, well, why? Remember now that we just have 300 words to work with. And 300 words boom, it goes by really, really fast. So the bulk of your word count needs to be here inside of your discussion. So we're going to have our opening here, 1 to 2 sentences, 2 sentences max, and we want to have our main idea clearly and directly stated. Clear and direct. Now, what we mean by clear and direct, when you read that main idea, it is not an Agatha Christie mystery, okay? The reader knows exactly what you're saying. Then, what happens next, this is the proof of your main idea, okay? So everything in here has to support your main idea. And this is going to take the form of, right, claim. What comes next? Evidence in the form of quotes. Good. And then we have to have analysis. So that's when you go in and you synthesize, you start to pull things apart and weave it together. So now you'll notice here, with just 2 paragraphs of discussion, our main idea has to be like a laser, right? What does the main idea have to be? A laser. And the main idea can't be scattered all over. It has to be really, really clear, really, really direct, and really, really tight. So then we go in, right? So build those 2 paragraphs, and then we have our closing. And what we should do in the closing is we want to restate our main idea. As well, we want to end the paper. And we do this by not allowing any new ideas to creep into the end of the paper. Right? So now, short opening, 2 to 3 paragraphs of discussion, everything to support that, and then we have our closing, and just like the opening, the closing should be brief. One to 2 sentences maximum. So that way we can put all of our time, all of our efforts into the discussion, right? Into those 2 great paragraphs there, because that's where we have our claim, our evidence, and our analysis, because that's what supports our idea. Very good. So now let's take a look at what not to do and then what to do when writing a poetry explication.